Welcome to session number 18, The Pillar and Others. And we're talking, of course, about a series of expressions or terms that have come up during this study related to Exodus, the last session or two, anyhow. We want to get a handle on terms like Yahweh, Christ, the pillar, the angel of God, Malach Elohim, an angel, my angel, and then from the burning bush, the angel of Yahweh, Malach Yahweh. Well, we can add two more terms, two associated terms. The first one that we would add is called the angel of his presence, Malach Paneh. I assume that's the way we pronounce it. It's close enough. Paneh. And we find that angel described or talked about in Isaiah 63:9, where Isaiah says, through all that they, the Israelis, suffered, he, Malach Paneh, suffered too. The messenger sent from his very presence, that is Malach Paneh, as is translated here, delivered them. In his love and mercy, he, Malach Paneh, protected them. He lifted them up and carried them through ancient times. Well, the second term that we could introduce at this point is found in Malachi 3:1, called the angel of the covenant, Malach Berit, B-E-R-I-T. And in Malachi it says, I, Yahweh, am about to send my messenger, not specified, who will clear the way before me. And if you know the reference to this verse from the New Testament, you realize that that's John the Baptist. Indeed, the Lord, Adonai in this case, not Yahweh, but Adonai, the Lord Adonai you are seeking will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant, that is Malach Berit, whom you long for, is certainly coming. Well, it seems that the angel of the covenant is used here to describe some event that's future to the Old Testament time. So this particular verse doesn't relate directly to the Exodus, but it is an extension of this group of names that we are interested in. We're trying to solve a mystery and get some answers to some questions. Keep in mind further that when one of these players, that list that we've been talking about, speaks, there is always the question, who is it? And if it's appropriate, if it happens to be said that this is God speaking, which member of the Trinity is speaking? Father, Son, Holy Spirit? And while we're at it, we could add one more expression, the name of God. One of the angels was said to have had the name of God within him. So the name of God is also used as a synonym for God himself in the Old Testament. Well, there's an angel who bears the name Yahweh. Could he be the one with Yahweh's name within him? You remember that angel is Malach Yahweh. He's the only angel with that name, Yahweh, in his title. So, again, the key element of our mystery lies with this question. Which of these players among that whole list are the same personality? Are they all distinct, or are some of them the same? And when a speaker is declared to be God, which member of the Trinity is he? If we can answer those two questions, we'll be well on our way to solving the mystery. Well, there's one quick answer that we can get about sameness, and we see that in Judges 13. Let me read several verses. I'm going to read verse 3, verse 6, verse 9, and then verse 13. So 4 verses. And I'm going to read the names of the angels using the malak term rather than what the translation actually says, because I want us to keep these various names straight. So, beginning in verse 3, Malak Yahweh appeared to the woman, this was Samson's mother, or his mother to be anyhow, and said to her, "You are infertile and childless, but you will conceive and have a son." That would have been Samson. The woman went, and this is verse 6, the woman went and said to her husband, "A man sent from God came to me. He looked a lot like Malak Elohim, angel of God. He was very awesome. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name." Verse 9, God answered Manoah's prayer. Manoah said, "Send the guy back, please." So Malak Elohim visited the woman again while she was sitting in the field, but her husband Manoah wasn't with her. And then we drop down to verse 13. Malak Yahweh told Manoah, "Your wife should pay attention to everything I told her." And from that point on, it's almost entirely Malak Yahweh that's referred to. Well, excuse me. It seems that the term angel of God and angel of Yahweh, Malak Elohim, Malak Yahweh, are used interchangeably, and that's true. You'll find that in a number of places in Scripture that they are used interchangeably. So we could say that Malak Elohim, Malak Yahweh are the same personality. But who is that personality? Manoah had his opinion down in verse 22. It reads, "And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die, for we have seen God." So Manoah says, Malak Yahweh is God. Well, do you think he's right? Let me go back to an earlier expression or verses in Judges. Back to Judges 2, for example. Let's read the first 4 verses and watch this very carefully. Malak Yahweh went up from Gilgal to Bochim. Now they're in the land of Israel. This is after the Exodus. Malak Yahweh said, "I brought you up from Egypt and led you into the land. I had solemnly promised to my agreement with you, but you must not make an agreement with the people who live in this land." That's the land of Canaan. "You should tear down the altars where they worship," the Canaanites, "but you have disobeyed me. Why would you do such a thing? At that time, I also warned you. If you disobey, I will not drive out the Canaanites from before you. They will ensnare you, and their gods will lure you away." And in verse 4, when Malak Yahweh finished speaking these words to all the Israelites gathered at Bochim, the people wept loudly. Now let's think about all of those entities: Malak Yahweh, Malak Elohim, uh, Malak Paneh, Malak Berit, an angel, my angel. But this angel, Yahweh, Malak Yahweh, says he brought the Hebrews up out of Egypt. He's not mentioning any other angels. That leaves open the possibility that all of those angel terms referred to Malak Yahweh. And if you stop and think about it for a moment, the pillar could just as well also be a manifestation of Malach Yahweh, because outside of the pillar, there is no other stated manifestation of these angels or angel during the Exodus. The pillar's it. Well, what about all the I claims? Who might that truth make the angel? We're assuming that Malach Yahweh told the truth. Well, if you look at it, those are all things that said, this has got to be Yahweh. So if you answered Yahweh, let me ask you this question. Which person of the Trinity must Malach Yahweh be, if he indeed is Yahweh? Well, you don't get a real clue here. But that's why we brought up Malach Berit in Malachi. Go back there and see whether that statement now gives you any clue. Well, let's take a moment and review the last point we made in the previous session. This is back in Exodus 33, verses 1 to 3. And Yahweh said to Moses, excuse me, go up from here, you and the people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, to the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And I said, I will give it to your descendants, and I will send an angel before you. So there's what he said. I'm going to send an angel before you, probably Malach Yahweh. And I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the rest of the ites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey. Now watch this. But I will not go up among you, for you are a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way. It's as if God said, hey, after that golden calf incident, if I go with you in the midst of this camp, I just might get ticked off and wipe you all out. So I'm not going with you. That's interesting. The speaker is identified as Yahweh, and the angel is probably Malach Yahweh. They have to be different personalities because one is going inside the camp on the journey, the other is not. So we've got two personalities. Well, let that percolate a while. And let's move on and talk a little bit more about the pillar and the clouds and the fire. The pillar, recall, has two roles. That's to lead the Hebrews along the path to the promised land and to offer protection along the way. It's already done it once, remember, when the pillar came as a barrier between the Egyptians and the Israelis. But the pillar also served a third purpose, and that was to remind the Hebrews that God was present. Even though he's not in the midst of the camp now, he's not going to be. So the pillar is a manifestation of God's presence while his actual being is not physically visible. Okay? But look at the words that are used to describe the pillar: lead, protect, and represent. That doesn't sound like a carrot or a potato to me. That sounds like an intelligent being. So let's examine the pillar a little bit further in its activity and its presence. For example, the pillar was in essence bringing about deliverance or salvation. How? Well, back in Exodus 14, as we spoke a minute ago, about the barrier between the Egyptians and the Hebrews. It wouldn't let the Egyptians get to the Hebrews until the Hebrews had passed over the Red Sea on dry land. So that protection was a part of the action of the deliverance and salvation of the nation. Well, the cloud's also involved in revelation, where God speaks to a person. For example, in Exodus 33, beginning in verse 9, says, whenever Moses entered the tent, this is the tent of meeting, this is before the tabernacle was complete, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of that tent, and Yahweh would speak with Moses. When all the people would see the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people, each one at his own tent, would stand there, and they would rise and worship when they saw that. And Yahweh would speak to Moses face to face, meaning he just spoke as a man speaks to his friend. That doesn't mean there's actually visible faces involved at all. Of course, Moses was, but Yahweh's face was not visible. And by the way, the word for presence is the Hebrew word for face. Just thought you might like to know. And then Moses would return to the camp. But his servant Joshua, son of Nun, a young man, did not leave the tent. Well, what is the significance of Moses returning to the camp? Well, remember, God, Yahweh, said, I am not going in the middle of that camp on this journey. So the tent was outside the camp. God and Moses could communicate outside the camp while the people stayed in their tents inside the camp. So this is part of God's statement being verified here. Well, there's something else, though, about this that you may not have thought about before and may not have even thought about when you're reading through the Psalms. Psalm 99, for example, verse 6. Moses and Aaron were among Yahweh's priests. Samuel, who wasn't even born until after the Exodus, was one of those who prayed to him. They, Moses, Aaron, and Samuel, prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh answered them. Yahweh spoke to them from a pillar of cloud. They obeyed his regulations and the ordinance he gave them. So what are we saying? Evidently, that pillar stuck around after the Exodus and spoke, and that pillar was involved in communication between Samuel and Yahweh. Well, there's also a time when God spoke to more than one person at a time, outside of Malach Yahweh, which we saw earlier, who was speaking to everybody at Bokim. Numbers 11:25, Moses is recounting some of the Exodus, and he says this, and Yahweh came down in the cloud and spoke to them. The them is the 70 elders of Israel. And he took some of the spirit that was on Moses and put it on the 70 elders. Well, the pillar was also involved when Yahweh was in an act of judgment. Back again in Numbers 12, starting in verse 5, we see this. And Yahweh came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting. By this time, it would have been the tabernacle. And he called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. Verse 9, the anger of Yahweh burned against them, Aaron and Miriam, and he departed. When the cloud departed from over the tent, Miriam became leprous as snow. Remember, it was a time when Miriam and Aaron challenged Moses, saying, we're as much a leader as you are. And God says, want to bet? And he made Miriam leprous for 7 days. Not Aaron, not sure why, but you can suspect that it was because Aaron was the high priest, and he could not function as a high priest if he were leprous. But we don't know, we're not told. Well, there's also a place where the pillar is involved in a commissioning. Joshua's commissioning. Deuteronomy 31, verse 15. Yahweh appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud that stood above the door of the tent. And Yahweh commissioned Joshua, son of Nun, be strong and courageous, for you will take the Israelites to the land I have promised them, and I will be with you. Joshua got that message several times. And then the cloud, the pillar, was involved in an exhibition of the faithfulness of Yahweh. Remember, it represents his presence. And even Nehemiah, long after not only the Exodus, but after the captivity, Nehemiah 9 in verse 12 says, you, Yahweh, guided them with a pillar of cloud by day and with a pillar of fire by night to illumine them for the path they were to travel. Well, that's not new, but in verse 19 he continues, due to your great compassion, you did not abandon them in the desert. There's the faithfulness. The pillar of cloud did not stop guiding them in the path by day, nor did the pillar of fire stop illuminating for them by night the path on which they should travel. And again, another one, the glory of the Lord, the pillar. I have trouble saying that word today. The pillar was involved in displays of the glory of the Lord, the glory of Yahweh. In Exodus 24, verse 15, Moses went up to the mountain, and the cloud, there's the pillar, covered the mountain. The glory of Yahweh resided on Mount Sinai. And the glory means the brightness of his majesty. That's one way to think about it. Verse 16, the glory of Yahweh resided on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the seventh day, Yahweh called to Moses from within the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of Yahweh was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in plain view of the people. By the way, at Sinai, there were other angels involved, evidently more than one, particularly in the reception and transmission of the law from God to Moses to the people. In Acts 7:38, we see Stephen's swan song before he was stoned. And in verse 38 of chapter 7 of Acts, it says, this is the man, that's Moses, who was in the congregation in the wilderness with the angel who spoke to him at Mount Sinai. So very possibly it was Malach Yahweh who was speaking to Moses at the summit of Sinai. And with our ancestors, and he received living orders to give to you. He's talking, Stephen's talking to those who are about to stone him. And in verse 53, he continues to tell this to this audience. You received the law by decrees given by angels. But even then, you did not obey it. So he said the law was mediated by angels. And you can see that same thing implied in Galatians 3:19 and Hebrews 2:2. By the way, did you know that the Shekinah is not a biblical word? Well, for that matter, neither is Trinity, right? But the idea that the Shekinah describes is. Let's get one more point about the pillar and then we'll move on a bit. In Exodus 40, near the end now of the Exodus, and starting in verse 35, said Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting. This would be the tabernacle now, because the cloud settled on it, and the glory of Yahweh filled the temple. So Moses couldn't even go in. But when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out on all their journeys. But if the cloud was not lifted up, then they would not journey until the day it was taken up. So notice it says that the pillar then was a signal as well as providing protection and guidance. It was a signal. It says, okay, guys, now we're going to go. In order to say, no, we're going to stay here. Verse 38, for the cloud of Yahweh was on the tabernacle by day, but fire would be on it at night in plain view of all of the house of Israel. It's in their journeys. The cloud was a signal, as we said. So where are we to this point? Well, let's think about this. Let's wrap this up. Uh, well, before I do, though, let me go back to that idea. And now I've forgotten what it was. So, one of those senior moments, I guess. So I will go ahead. Let's talk about winding up this session and giving us an idea of what is left for us for the next session. First, all our references to angels in the Exodus seem to be to one personality, best described as Malach Yahweh. That's my conclusion, at least. You'll have to reach your own. Now, second, there's a reason to believe that the pillar is also a manifestation of Malach Yahweh. Again, the reason I think that is because there's no other manifestation of any of the angel phrases or expressions, my angel, an angel, Malach Elohim, and so forth. There's no indication that there was a manifestation of their existence. So that leaves the pillar as the only manifestation. So I think it was a manifestation so that the people of Israel knew that Malach Yahweh was there, the angel was there representing God. And it seems that Malach Yahweh may actually have the name Yahweh without Malach, just Yahweh, because of some of the things we read in Judges 2, for example. But at the same time, there is a second personality named Yahweh as well. So that means that we need to examine some scriptural references to Malach Yahweh to unravel this problem. Are there two Yahwehs, two personalities called Yahweh? If so, which two of the three persons of the Trinity would they be? Well,